I'm super excited because I miss comedy clubs so bloody much. You have no idea, Ethan. So first of all, welcome to our Leaders Who Care series. It's really great having you here.
Thank you so much for having me, Mark. And I also miss comedy clubs.
I
So
bet probably more than me.
yeah, it could be. It could be. Yeah.
But no, this is. We need more laughter. We always need more laughter, but man, do we need more laughter now?
I'm
Last
so,
year and a half, and continuing. So keep the faith. I think we're coming back, and
I will keep the faith, and I agree with you. It's vital. We need more
it,
laughs. Yeah.
I remember when it was Norman Lear talked about how it's so important laughter is for our well-being,
Hmm.
and I remember hearing that when I was younger and whatnot, and getting it, but not getting it even as much as I get it now. How
Yeah. I think that's right. Physically and emotionally, but also socially. Like what he did with laughter, with his shows. He was able to break taboos and get people talking and thinking about things in new ways just by being brilliantly funny. So.
and some of that you probably wouldn't be allowed to come on air right now for some crazy reason.
Yeah, I
Um,
guess that's possible. Yeah, he definitely broke some taboos and but yeah, with intelligence and humor, I think you can do that. It's
yeah,
rare, but yeah.
it was brilliant. So why don't we start first of all, Ethan, by you know just introducing yourself a little bit about you personally. Maybe there's something you've never told anybody in the world that you want to disclose now, something like that. And
Um,
you know,
wow.
I keep getting mistaken for an Uber driver. Whenever I pull up to a red light, are you my Uber? No, I'm not. I'm getting sick of it. Next person who asks, I'm telling them to hop in. I get it. It's my whole Afghani, Albani, Algeri, Armeni, Azerbaijani. I'm going alphabetically. It ends with Yemeni and Zagrebi, so sit back. It takes a while.
So, yeah, I'll tell you something that I've never told anyone else before, except my girlfriend. But I'll tell you, I had this idea for. So it's our puppy's 1 year birthday today. So we have a puppy. We have 3 dogs, but our puppy is 1 year old today. And I was thinking about that phrase when people say, "Oh, so when did you adopt your dog?" And I kind of want to say, "Oh no, he's not adopted. He's ours." So, but then I thought that gave rise to a business idea. I'm sure some entrepreneurs are watching this. My business idea, it's probably better as a sci-fi plot than an actual business idea, would be a really high-end breeder who would incorporate a little bit of your DNA into your puppy, so that you would have that family attachment to the puppy.
right?
So that's the thing I've never disclosed to anyone else, because people who have dogs but don't have kids, like us, I mean, the attachment is it's very similar. It's a family thing, and the grief when you lose them, and all the rest, and the pride when they graduate from school, all that. So the idea of actually just injecting even just a fraction of a percent of your own DNA into that puppy embryo, not a good idea, but probably a good sci-fi plot. Something I'm thinking of. So, oh, they're the dogs on cue.
But that's okay. That's to the thing. We like dogs on the show too, and
Yeah.
so would that be just one way, or would it be the other way too?
So the dog, so the dogs, when they're having a litter, they would they could help themselves to just a little bit of my DNA.
And I just
Oh
wonder,
no, no, no. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, if I had kids, get a little bit of the puppy DNA. Huh? That sounds like a worse idea, but I don't know.
I'm
Yeah,
just trying
you're
to
the
figure
businessman.
how our faces would change and stuff like that over generations from that,
Yeah, yeah.
and our language maybe.
I don't know. So another thing I can tell you that I don't tell people usually is, I'm like the premise guy. Like I feel like you come to me for a premise. I got a lot of premises. I don't end up making that sci-fi film. That's why I realized at an early age I'm better as the actor or the performer. I did go to film school for a year thinking I would become a director and a writer-director, and I did a little bit of that, but I was always just much more comfortable being in front of the camera or being on stage and just, you know. Anyway,
Well, that's a fear that a great majority of people aren't able to do. So that's a big skill set. And
yeah.
I found this super interesting because most people, including me, would be surprised to see an opera singer, comedian, not necessarily comedian and actor, even there are a lot of differences in skill sets there, but specifically opera and comedy in the same background. And so I like to ask people, to share, if you will, what your why is, but why you do what you do.
Um, Mostly, child support. I got a lot of bills to pay, and no, I don't have kids. I don't have child support to pay.
They're puppies.
And puppy support. Yeah, and there's like 12 in a litter. It's a lot harder than with kids, where maybe you have two or three kids. No. So first of all, just to be clear, I don't sing opera anymore. I did that for about 20 years. That was my career. At a certain point, I was acting first, then doing opera and doing some comedy. But about 7 or 8 years ago, I decided to change my focus to the comedy and the acting. Mostly TV is what I've been doing, and I kind of put the opera on hold, maybe a permanent hiatus. In any case, but yeah, the why. I just have always liked making people laugh and entertaining people. It's kind of like you were saying, it's an important thing. It can be an important thing in business, in all sorts of relationships, breaking the ice. But for me, I think it functions as a way of diffusing the natural anxiety and tension that's in the air whenever humans come into contact. There's just something about us. We're not an easy species. Like, yeah, when two dogs see each other, they go through certain rituals, and it's just then they're onto they go. I feel like it's a stickier thing with humans. So I think that's why. And I think also probably family background. There was some either silence in the house or tensions and things. And for me, the biggest relief is to just make people laugh. It's an impulse that I've always had. And you hear that from I've heard other comedians talking and saying, I think it was even Seinfeld who said in an interview that he thinks it is a sort of switch. It's like if your default setting in your head is at any moment, anything that's happening, your brain is set for whatever reason, genetic or upbringing, your brain is set on, okay, how could that be made funny? What's funny about that? How can I get a laugh out of this? If your brain's just set there, your brain's just set there. So that's sort of where my brain is set.
Yeah, I gotta watch myself in board meetings and stuff like that, because my brain does tell me things to say.
Yeah.
I gotta be careful that I don't say them sometimes.
Right, depending on where you're at, who you're with, what job you're doing at a particular moment, it's important to have a good editor and filter on that impulse.
It is, and yet, like you say, in meetings and developing, because let's face it, life's about relationships. You're talking about social, it's about relationships. It really, if people can laugh at themselves and each other, so much more can happen, right? And so I get the trigger that you're talking about, because I think it's a good trigger, even in business. And just more on the background a little bit, though. I mean, you did perform at New York City's Metropolitan Opera. You did perform at Carnegie. I mean, these were places and around the world.
Yeah.
So during that whole time, were you feeling like I got to do something different, or
yeah. But that's unfortunately that's one constant in my life. I'm one of those people who never feels 100% settled. Never feels like, oh yeah, this is. Although with the comedy, sometimes you can be on stage and doing your thing, and I think it's probably like that in business also. When you're in a groove and you're in that groove and things are going, you're like, I am in the right place. But I couldn't admit, I have some envy for some people you hear who talk about their life and their career as if like it was predestined and they knew this was always the thing for them, and it's just I knew this is what I was going to do, and I do it, and I'm happy I did it, and I have no regrets. That's not me. But I don't think that's many comedians, because a lot of comedy comes out of dissatisfaction and a lot of disgust, all those things. Yeah, with the opera was it's a discipline, and it's a skill, and it's something that, like a lot of arts or sports even, you watch someone who's doing it at a high level and you're like, oh wow, that person has a ton of talent, look at that talent. But of course they work their ass off at it for years and years and years and years. That's the only way to get good at any of these things. So for me, that was on some level, that was the appeal of opera. It was like just working at it. I had a coach who a singing teacher, a vocal coach who I worked with for many years, and so that was part of the appeal of it. But yeah, a little too serious in some ways. And my impulse was to make people laugh.
Yeah, no, I can get that. I didn't know if you were just tired of singing in Italian or something. Maybe that was it.
You know, I did work a lot in Italy, but I was mostly singing German repertoire for, for various reasons. That's where my career ended up being the most busy. So and I loved it. I loved Italy, and I loved a lot of the jobs. But I did burn out on all the travel. And again, business people could probably sympathize with this. These gigs were frequently 4 to 6 weeks long, and I would do many of them per year. And being away that much got to be heavy.
You mentioned the German. I love it when you say you always get recognized as the Uber driver type of thing.
Oh, right. Yes.
And whatnot. But you also said something about, was it German's the romantic language, but it's not
Yes.
it's just a or something.
Exactly. Yes. Something. Yeah. It's on my album. I should say, if I can do a plug, my album, which came out last year, it's called Thug Thug Jew, and it's about various things, including the kind of roles I've been playing on TV. And yeah, I have a bit in there about which language is the sexiest, and I go for German. And then
That was a shocker, by the way.
yeah, that's actually, it's funny you say shocker, because that's actually the formula for what makes something funny. Generally, it's the shock. It's the recognition. It's something you understand, and then the shock. So the surprise.
It worked. I recommend it. It was super funny, super
Thanks.
funny. And
Thanks. Oh, let me also, sorry, I just want to say about the album. The album came out a year ago. For a little bit there, it was #1 on iTunes and Amazon, which was very exciting. But then just a few months ago, it came out. Now it's also a special on YouTube. So you can look me up. You can watch the special for free on YouTube.
nice. And donations can be sent to. I'm just kidding.
Well, no,
So we
just
talked.
clicks. Yeah.
We talked about business there a little bit. It's taken decades for leaders to finally get it that if you care about what's going on in the world, if you align your business purpose, your dollars to impact for a good return on investment, but to impact, then it's going to be good for business. It's going to be good for attracting people. People want to work for you and with you because they want to make money, but they also want to have purpose. They want to make a difference. With that said, and I know you speak multiple languages, if I remember correctly,
Mm-hmm.
how early did you begin to notice that you could differentiate yourself, be it in comedy specifically, but just in general, by appealing to people's emotions like you're talking about and making a larger social impact by doing it?
Well, I would say that, with the exception of some shows I've done, like a friend of mine who's a comedian named Jimmy Tingle, a Boston comedian named Jimmy Tingle, he has a group called Humor for Humanity. And so he specifically does events where he's the shows, all the proceeds go to some philanthropic organizations. And I've done a number of shows like that. I would say those are the only ones where I'm explicitly working for the betterment of society. Although you could argue, like we're saying, that it's good to make people laugh and to be able to laugh about certain things I talk about, like ethnic stereotypes, to be able to laugh about those and address them instead of letting them hang over like a black cloud. That could have a positive social impact. But I don't want to inflate what I do and say that I'm healing the world through comedy. I don't. Although, you can heal a room, you can heal someone's day. There is healing in it. But as far as the power of language and the power of speaking multiple languages, that's just something I gravitated towards naturally in school and then through opera. One of the things I loved about opera and turned me on about it right at the outset was that polyglot nature of it. Listening to one of the first guys who really turned me on vocally was a guy named Boris Christoph, who's a Bulgarian bass who sang incredibly beautiful Italian. And so listening to him and then listening to Paul Robeson, one of the great American basses and a real hero, he's singing in Hebrew, he's singing in Russian, he's singing in many languages beautifully and with great heart and great empathy. In his case, great empathy for the working class and the working people. So yeah, performance certainly, for me, again, to be perfectly honest, I just get a kick out of it. I get a kick out of being on stage and entertaining people. Laughter above all.
By the way, you say perfectly honest. Is there a partial honest?
It's true. That is a good point. There's a good premise. for a joke. That's a great way to find a premise for a joke, like you just did. You notice some thing that people always say without thinking about it, and then you try to like tease it apart and like unravel it like a piece of sushi, like look at what is going on in there, and that's where the comedy comes from. It's a good instinct. Yeah.
And it's like sayings, I heard another one the other day, from the horse's mouth. I mean, where does that come from, the horse's mouth?
Yeah,
I know,
straight from the horse's mouth. Oh yeah, that is a good one.
and
Yeah, I had a few.
You wonder where it comes from. It actually came back from a bet. They said, well, you should speak to the trainer. And then the guy goes to the trainer, and then he says, well, if you really want to know what's going to happen, get it from the horse's mouth. And that's where the saying came from. But there's so many things that we say that are ridiculous. But it leads me to something else you talk about, and I think you said it right before. You do influence the room, and you can't save the world. But by influencing the room and impacting the room, they go out and talk to people about how good they felt about something or a joke or something like that. And it does impact. There's no doubt about it in my mind. But you talk about ethnic stereotyping a lot, and movies, TV shows, etc. And you talk about real experiences, like we mentioned. You're always recognized as the Uber driver, which I find hilarious.
Yeah, mistaken for. That's how the joke. Mistaken. Although it's a good gig. I mean, flexibility. Although as an employer, we can quibble with the way they.
And you don't have to claim it for tax purposes, because you're not really. You give the guy a lift, So
there you go.
Although he might not pay you because he thinks you're the Uber driver, and you don't have to pay. That's another story.
Yeah. It's a joke. It's based on a true story. It's happened a couple of times, but it's all based on exaggeration. Yeah.
But when it comes to ambiguity in language, we talked about words being matter, and we talked a little bit before this even about. I knew Norman Lear with the shows he came out with that sometimes might not possibly be able to come on now because of something they said in political correctness. Talk about how you see potentially laughter diffusing actual conflict that people have, and being value in business relationships as well, in the right scenarios, but how you see that being possible.
Well, it's funny when you say in a business setting. I have a tendency. There's probably something in my comedy. You can probably hear it on my album about not being shy about letting my opinion be known in a business setting if something isn't to my liking. But I find that I can do that, and actually, I'm talking about like complaining to the manager. I mean, that terrible thing. People now talk about what a terrible thing that is to complain to the manager or to the owner. But I try, and I think 90+% of the time, I manage to do it with humor. And that's a way you can actually get your message across and get the result that you want without the thing blowing up. Because if you just go straight to the heart of the matter, straight to the complaint, straight to the gripe or what you're owed or what you want, that's a very, I guess you could say, ego-bound approach to an interaction. The thing about humor is you're actually, in a way, you're giving something at that moment. You're giving some of yourself and giving a little bit of pleasure to the other person. And I think it can change the landscape completely. When you first said how it could be used to diffuse conflict, I was trying to think. Suddenly my mind went to like the UN or like a summit between two warring nations. I don't know if in where the stakes are that high, but I'll bet it can do that as well, where two leaders of countries, if they can establish a rapport with some smiles and some laughs, I bet it does pave the way to a more fruitful negotiation.
I can't remember who it was. I don't think it was Seinfeld. I can't remember who it was, but he did a skit on, the presidents of the U.S. and China going out for dinner, or Netanyahu going out with the Khomeini for dinner, and then one says, "Let's go out to Chinese food," and it's, this type of stuff. And they're just people. Even the government people, even the UN people, right. They're still people. And I think more than anything, they could use a good laugh. And I think they respect people that laugh at themselves.
Well, that's 100% true, and that's a critical tenet of good comedy, which is that what we say is like, I do some coaching of comedians with their like beginners or people who are developing more material, and one thing to point out to a beginner is that when you're on the comedy stage, punching up is very effective, like making jokes about the president or about your boss or about your parents or about whoever's got their metaphoric, thumb on your head. Punching this way works also really well on stage. Like you're saying, joking about yourself. Audiences really respond to that because we all go through our days in some way tormenting ourselves, suffering from that. The thing that doesn't work well on the comedy stage is punching down, making fun of, in the worst case example, an open mic comic in New York making jokes about a homeless person. Not to say that there can't be someone who has a great take on that situation. In fact, I'll tell you one. It's one of my favorite jokes ever. But yeah. So in general, and we've seen that with our leaders in this country. What's the difference between a leader who can make a joke about themselves and how inviting that is to the listener and to the public. It humanizes you instantly. You don't take yourself seriously. Instead of going out there with your chest pumped up and kind of bragging, to invite everyone into your humanity by making a self-deprecating joke. There's nothing like it. Let me just tell you that quick. Really, I'll give the credit where it's due. It's Norm Macdonald. And I'm paraphrasing, but he basically says he sees a homeless guy with a dog. And he says, basically, well, that dog must be thinking, man, this is a long walk. That's the
a long walk. Now I got it finally.
I didn't do it justice because he's a genius, but that's to me, that's like the quintessential brilliant thinking of a comedic mind like that. My other favorite, as long as we're talking, is Rodney Dangerfield. And again, paraphrasing, but he says, my wife and I had 25 great years. Then we met. So
right.
Again,
and he goes like this.
Yeah. So both jokes do that thing of it's a very quick, unexpected turn of events, and then so
I think I've heard the Dangerfield one. I don't think I've ever heard the long walk one. And although it actually took me 5 seconds to get it, when I got it, it's like, damn, he's right.
Well, that's actually a beautiful kind of a laugh, and you can hear it on some of Woody Allen's records from the 60s. Some of the first stuff I listened to. There are some of those laughs that develop. You can hear him say a joke, and the audience, one person gets it, then another person, and then it builds, and he waits, and that's a beautiful thing. The laugh moving across the crowd like a ripple turning into a wave.
Well, you raised a good point there. A few points. You spoke with Seinfeld before. When he was visiting the Middle East at one point, he actually said, I know I'm a comedian, but I actually think comedy's a way to peace here. Actually, and that's kind of what we're talking about. And when you're in a business deal or negotiating or interviewing or on stage or whatever, you mentioned it. Patience is critical to getting the outcome you're looking for, including laughter, right?
True. On the flip side, it's very important as a comedian to keep moving, and that's another thing that has to be taught to someone who's starting out, which is, and this works, I'm sure, in business also. If your joke doesn't land, if the point doesn't land, what do? You go to your next joke. You can't stew in it. You can't show any fear. You can't, even if it's making you schwitz, you just got to keep moving with a smile or with whatever look is on your face. So,
or like, well, that went over really well.
Exactly. That's what we call a save. Yeah. If something doesn't go well, you can get a good laugh out of what you say about how bad it went over.
Well, save for us, where I come from, Montreal, is a goalie in hockey. But that's another story. So, but I get it. It's
Oh, you're from Montreal?
Mais oui, I'm from Montreal. Yeah.
Bien sûr, super.
Oh,
Oui, certainement. Best bagels in the world, Saint-Viator Bagels in Montreal. And I'm a New Yorker, and people. But you got to admit, when the thing is better, you just admit it. That's a better bagel in every way.
I'm so glad we're recording this because I second the motion.
No,
They've had
Yeah.
tests so long. I order them and get them delivered from Montreal.
The few times I've been to Montreal, that's the first stop. They're coming hot out of the oven, the sesame. Oh my God. Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If you want to see in this movie, it goes back to about 9,000 years. The Apprenticeship of Duty Craft.
Duty Kravitz. You're in it?
No, I think
They're in it.
I think Gator Bagel's in it.
Also, that sandwich shop is in it where they
Oh,
smoke.
Walensky's is in it. That's the name
Yes.
of it, Walensky's, right? So,
Yeah. And my friend there showed me those two.
Great
items.
comedy festival in Montreal too, by the way.
Yes, the best. I think it's considered the best. Yeah.
Right
Just
after-
for laughs.
I feel like I'm Chamber of Commerce in Montreal now, but right after the Jazz Festival and the Comedy Festival, what a month to be in Montreal in July.
Yeah.
So
I was there 2 summers in a row for the triathlon in Mont Tremblant.
oh yeah, very good.
So that's what I was doing there.
Yeah, great skiing, freezing, but great skiing. So on another topic,
Yeah.
a little more serious. My grandparents were from Kiev and whatnot, and they would always
That's where my family came from also.
awesome. So we are related. We are related.
Could
Hey.
be.
They would always say, and it wasn't a slogan or a brand.
By the way, now that we've established that we're related, can you loan me like $50? I just
What are you, Alan? What was his name? Oh, geez, what's his name? No, it always asked for $50. The guy that Larry King would always have to.
Oh.
He was in Miami. He'd always, when he was getting going, he would say, "Can you lend me $50?" And then
Oh, I didn't know that. Oh, wow.
everybody apparently, I don't know. So
I wasn't always vegan, but I was always latent vegan. So like back in the 90s, I went to Peter Luger. And I said to the waiter, I don't want to see any blood. He said, then you should take a cab home because the subway around here is rough. So I said, all right, just bring it well done. A guy at the next table says, did he just say well done? Well done? Bring it well done? If you don't know how to order steak, don't come to Peter Luger. This is one of the things I prefer about being vegan. You never hear. If you don't know how to order squash, don't come to Vegan Village. My grandfather always used to say, whatever you do, don't overdo it. He lived to 103, the hypocrite.
they would always say, as long as you have your health, that's the most important thing.
Right.
And it was for real. It wasn't like, branding or anything like that. And then they'd say, obviously, education, but because the experiences they went through, that was the most important thing. So with everything we've talked about, the last year and a half has been unbelievable for so many people in so many ways, with COVID, with racial justice, with wildfires, with you name it, so many things. Mother Nature was not a happy camper by any means. And by the way, speaking of opera, I have birds that sing outside my place here every day.
Wow.
When COVID hit, I swear they were singing opera, and it went something like, I don't know where they all are, but this is awesome. The people they were talking about.
I like it. That, to me, I feel like that's, again, good premise. Good premise for like a kid's opera about the birds when the people go away. I like that idea.
You can take it. You can do a Milton
All right.
for me and take it. But so I wanted to ask, in your experiences and internationally, even in things you've seen, do you think there's been, if you will, an awakening about what people think is really important for them?
I've heard this very topic discussed, and I heard a young Olympian athlete on the BBC just today.
Mm-hmm.
I think he grew up in the States, I think, but I think he's representing Liberia.
Mm-hmm.
And he said in the candid way that a 19-year-old or 20-year-old can say without having to qualify it so that he didn't seem arrogant or insensitive, which he wasn't being, but I would have qualified it all over the place. But he said, no, the pandemic was really good for me because it really focused me. I realized, like, I got to do this and I got to do this now, and I'm just going to focus on this 100%. So
That's right on.
it did do that for some people. I hesitate to speak for anyone else. I know it did do that for some people. For me, it's not been as difficult for me as it has been for many people. Thank goodness I stayed healthy and we had a place to hide out away from, etc. But the disruption of momentum, or the disruption of perceived momentum in a career, is very difficult. And I know for people in business, for me in the performing arts, I was on a mad tear in 2019. My album came out I recorded it at the end of the year. It came out in the beginning of 2020. I booked a lot of TV gigs in 2019. They were all coming out during the pandemic. And, whether it's real, this concept of momentum in whatever you're doing in your life, or if it's just a perception that it can actually then affect how you behave and move in the world, or it might just be a chimera. Maybe it's just like when people look at baseball players and they say, oh, he's due for a hit. Yeah. When in fact statisticians will tell you that doesn't really have any meaning. Each time you step up to the plate, your odds are your odds. That's a rambling non-answer to your question. But I'd say to the people who were able to get focused and rediscover their priorities, or discover their priorities through the tribulations of the last 18 months, God bless them. That's fantastic. I think they might be the minority, but even if you get a glimpse of it, let's not paint this in black and white. I think you can get glimpses of that maybe from the isolation and from the change in tempo, and maybe then try to hold on to those.
To that point, one thing I've noticed, because I've always done like interviews, and the work I do, I interview a lot of senior level people in business and nonprofit and all that stuff. And so I've always done interviews, but now this whole Leaders Who Care series. And one thing I did find is, and it relates to what we said before about being able to laugh at ourselves more, is that if we were on the video now doing what you're doing, and a dog comes in, jumps on your lap, before it would have been, oh my God, no, you can't do that, this is terrible, terrible. And now it's like, big deal, this is real life.
Yeah. No, I think that is an important lesson you could maybe take back into the non-digital real world. That the unexpected, maybe it teaches us that we're able to roll with bigger changes and bigger obstacles than we thought we could.
Exactly, and don't get hung up on, what's that expression? Don't sweat the small stuff.
Right.
But what everybody always forgets, the next line, and it's don't sweat the small stuff, but almost everything is small stuff.
Right. Interesting.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. So before we go, and we're gonna, especially for all the reasons, like you like to laugh, you like sing theater bagels, your family's from Kiev. There's a lot of good stuff. We're gonna have to have you on multiple times.
By the way, let me qualify that. Great grandparents came from Kiev. So grandfather born in Brooklyn, the other grandfather born in Pennsylvania. But yeah.
Well, my grandfather, but he was great too. But he was my grandfather. He came from Kiev. So,
Gotcha.
But let me ask you, if there's one thing you could say that you're grateful for, and another that you're hopeful for, where we are right now, what would they be?
So I'm grateful for, not to be schmaltzy here, but I'm always grateful in my life, and I appreciate it more. This is something I learned in the pandemic. I love interacting with strangers, and I miss that, the chance encounter. And you and I met in a sort of chancy way, and here we are having a great conversation and enjoying interacting. So I'm very grateful for the fact that in spite of the isolation, this technology came about and became so seamless that we can do this. And now it feels natural. Just a year later, this feels completely natural, when it felt kind of weird and forbidding. And so I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that we can keep meeting new humans and making each other laugh, and moving humanity forward that way.
I think you're right on. Hey, thanks so much, man. This is awesome. Real good talk, and
Thank you.
I look forward to more.
Thank you. The pleasure is mine, and thanks again. And I look forward to meeting you in person and hearing those birds sing in person. And
and eating and having a
Good.
bagel.
Yes, please, a San Viator bagel when they open Canada in a few weeks.
Yeah, they are opening it. I'm
Yeah.
hoping to go up there. Thanks, man.
All right, great. Thanks so much, Mark.